Hello everyone, welcome back to Roseman's Mandarin Garden. In English, when we want to express certainty, ask a question, show surprise or sarcasm, or express other attitudes, we usually rely on intonation, right? For example, really? 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 In Chinese, we also use intonation to express emotions. For example, 你说什么? This is a question. 你说什么? This expresses shock or disbelief. However, the emotions expressed by intonation are limited. To make different emotions and attitudes much clearer, Chinese has developed a special group of function words that appears at the end of a sentence. We call them 语气词. 语气词. 语气 means tone or attitude. So these are words that express the speaker's tone. In English, these words are usually translated as sentence final particles. Understanding these particles is very important because the exact same sentence can convey a completely different meaning depending on which particle is used. Today, we're going to look at the 4 sentence final particles you'll hear most often in everyday Mandarin. Le, de, ma, ne. When we studied aspect particles before, we learned a le can be placed after a verb to indicate an action has been completed. For example, 我看完了这本书. 我看完了这本书. 我打扫了房间. 我打扫了房间. Here, 看完, 打扫 are the verbs, and le tells that the action has been completed. This is probably the most familiar use of le as a function word. When it appears at the end of a sentence, it can also express the speaker's attitude, a firm, declarative tone. Usually, it indicates a change, a realization, or a new situation. What does it mean? Let's look at 3 common situations. First, realizing a situation or circumstance. Here, you have just become aware of a change in the situation. For example, 我不能送你了. 我不能送你了. I could see you off before, but the current situation has changed, and now I can't. 天气凉了. 天气凉了. The speaker has noticed the change in the weather. 你现在翅膀硬了，敢跟我顶嘴了. 你现在翅膀硬了，敢跟我顶嘴了. This is a very common expression Chinese parents often use when arguing with their children. 翅膀硬了 literally means wings have become strong. A young bird with strong wings can fly on its own and no longer depends on its parents. This sounds positive in English. However, Chinese parents usually say it sarcastically with a hint of resentment. What they really mean is, you are grown up, you don't need me anymore, so now you turn your back on me and argue with me. Once again, the sentence final le marks a change in the situation rather than simply a completed action. Second, expressing a decision or something that is about to be done immediately. 您先忙，我走了. 您先忙，我走了. Here, 我走了 doesn't mean I have already left. It means I'm leaving right now. I'm about to go immediately. 爸爸说下午不去公司了. 爸爸说下午不去公司了. Not going to the office is a decision. The particle le emphasizes the decision has been made. Okay, let's look at the third situation. Something that will definitely happen in a hypothetical situation. 如果你看了我的报告，你就知道我的意思了。如果你看了我的报告，你就知道我的意思了。The particle le appears twice in this sentence. The first one is an aspect particle, and the second one is a sentence final particle. The first one marks the completion of the action, reading the report. The second one means once that condition is met, you will definitely understand my point. Have you noticed what these 3 uses of sentence final le have in common? Whether you're talking about becoming aware of a change, making a decision or predicting what will inevitably happen, they all involve the idea of change over time. In the first case, our awareness of a situation has changed. In the second, our state of mind has changed. We have made a decision. In the third, we are talking about a change that is expected to happen in the future. Actually, the sentence final le developed from the aspect particle le. That's why the boundary between these two uses is not always that clear-cut. If you start paying attention to everyday Mandarin, you will notice most conversations involve some kind of change, changes in circumstances, decisions, or states. That's one reason le has become one of the most frequently used particles in Chinese. De is also a very versatile character. It's a structural particle used between an attributive modifier and a noun. It can form a nominal structure by attaching itself to a verb, an adjective, or a phrase, and it can also function as a sentence final particle. Most learners first encounter it as a structural particle. It links a modifier to a noun expressing possession or attribution. For example, 汉语是我的母语，汉语是我的母语。北京是中国的首都，北京是中国的首都。在一趟拥挤的列车上，他遇到了自己未来的妻子。在一趟拥挤的列车上，他遇到了自己未来的妻子。In all of these examples, de simply connects a modifier with the noun that follows it. Because of this, in colloquial expressions, when the head noun is omitted, but can be understood from the context, a phrase ending in de can function like a noun and refer to a person, thing, or matter. For example, 他是卖花的，他是卖花的，把那个红的给我，把那个红的给我。这个项目是我做的，这个项目是我做的。However, when de functions as a sentence final particle, it serves as a different purpose. Here, it expresses certainty, explanation, or reassurance. It tells the listener what the speaker is saying is true or something will indeed happen. For example, 你怎么还没打扫房间？我会打扫的。你怎么还没打扫房间？我会打扫的。I'm reassuring the listener that I really will clean the room. 他不喜欢你，他会喜欢我的。他不喜欢你，他会喜欢我的。Here, I'm not merely making a prediction. I'm expressing a strong belief. In Chinese, there's a very useful sentence pattern derived from this function. It's commonly used to specify or emphasize details about an event, such as the agent, patient, specific time, or location of an action. Let me explain how it works. In a regular sentence, the basic word order is subject, time, place, verb, object. For example, 我昨天晚上在公园碰见他。我昨天晚上在公园碰见他。Now, suppose you want to emphasize one particular piece of information. You simply place the verb 是 before the information you want to emphasize, and the particle 的 at the end of the sentence. The basic word order stay the same. 是我昨天晚上在公园碰见他的。是我昨天晚上在公园碰见他的。我是昨天晚上在公园碰见他的。我是昨天晚上在公园碰见他的。我昨天晚上是在公园碰见他的。我昨天晚上是在公园碰见他的。我昨天晚上在公园碰见的是他。我昨天晚上在公园碰见的是他。Here, the word order needs to be changed a little bit. The particle is inserted between the action verb and the object. It's a very useful sentence pattern in spoken Mandarin whose function and effects are similar to the English structure. It's that. It's that. To master the construction, the only thing you need to remember are put 是 before the information you want to highlight, put 的 at the end of a sentence or before the object. Compared with English, forming questions in Chinese is actually quite simpler. For a yes or no question, you just need to add the interrogative particle ma at the end of the normal sentence. For example, 你回家了，你回家了，你回家了吗？你回家了吗？他结婚了，他结婚了，他结婚了吗？他结婚了吗？ Remember, a question ending in the particle ma normally expects a yes or no answer. That's the key feature of this particle. For special questions, you also don't need to change the word order. You simply replace the information you want to ask about with the appropriate question words. Starting from this sentence, 我们12点在公司门口碰面。我们12点在公司门口碰面。You can ask, 谁12点在公司门口碰面？谁12点在公司门口碰面？我们几点在公司门口碰面？我们几点在公司门口碰面？我们12点在哪儿碰面？我们12点在哪儿碰面？我们12点在公司门口干什么？我们12点在公司门口干什么？ Notice that in all of these examples, the sentence structure stays exactly the same. In these questions, we can actually omit the interrogative particle, but if we do add one, we use no, not ma. 谁12点在公司门口碰面呢？谁12点在公司门口碰面呢？我们几点在公司门口碰面呢？我们几点在公司门口碰面呢？我们12点在哪儿碰面呢？我们12点在哪儿碰面呢？我们12点在公司门口干什么呢？我们12点在公司门口干什么呢？ Here, the particle no doesn't change the meaning of the question. It simply makes the tone sound a little softer or more conversational. If it is an alternative question or affirmative negative question, we also use no rather than ma. For example, 你想留下来还是想跟我一起走呢？你想留下来还是想跟我一起走呢？你晚上去不去呢？你晚上去不去呢？ So here the easy rule to remember. In Chinese, a question ending in ma expects a yes or no answer. For questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no, special questions, alternative questions, and affirmative negative questions, the interrogative particle used is no. Besides asking questions, no can also add emphasis or make the speaker's tone more expressive. For example, 这么多年了，你还记着呢？这么多年了，你还记着呢？ Here, it expresses the speaker's surprise. 怎么还生气了呢？怎么还生气了呢？ In this sentence, it makes the speaker's tone stronger and more expressive. It may convey surprise, concern, confusion, or even gentle persuasion, depending on the context. Sometimes a speaker asks a question using only a noun or noun phrase, leaving the rest of the sentence unsaid. In these cases, choosing ma or ne changes meaning completely. Imagine someone says, 你把那份文件打印一下。你把那份文件打印一下。那份合同吗？ Here, ma is used to confirm what you heard. In other words, you are speaking. Do you mean the contract? Do you mean the contract? The answer is still simply 是的，是的。Now compare with this conversation. 你把手里的文件打印一下。你把手里的文件打印一下。那合同呢？那合同呢？ Here, you're not confirming, but asking for additional information about the contract. The answer might be 先不急，等甲方最后确认。先不急，等甲方最后确认。When people say 我的文件呢？我的文件呢？我的书呢？我的书呢？我的钥匙呢？我的钥匙呢？ These are actually shortened versions of 我的文件在哪儿呢？我的文件在哪儿呢？我的书在哪儿呢？我的书在哪儿呢？我的钥匙在哪儿呢？我的钥匙在哪儿呢？ In other words, when ne follows a noun phrase by itself, it's often equivalent to saying what about or where is, depending on the context. That's all for today's lesson. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn Mandarin and Chinese culture in a more systematic way, you're welcome to book my one-on-one lessons. You can also download free Mandarin learning materials from my Ko-fi page. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. Your support means a lot to me. I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.